Most people think the worst tanks in history were just outdated rust buckets, but some were so catastrophically flawed, they never stood a chance. And the truth is, the worst tanks weren't just ineffective, they were often more dangerous to their own crews than to the enemy. These weren't weapons, they were political stunts, improvised stopgaps, and over-engineered monstrosities that collapsed the moment reality hit. Built for reasons that made sense on paper, failed spectacularly in practice, and exposed just how chaotic and desperate wartime decision making can become. The German Jagdtiger was the largest and heaviest tank destroyer of the Second World War, and one of the least practical. It reflected Germany's late war strategy of fielding increasingly heavy vehicles with overwhelming firepower, despite having neither the fuel nor the infrastructure to support them. Approved in 1943 and entering limited service in 1944, the Jagdtiger was built on an extended Tiger II chassis. It mounted a powerful 128mm gun, capable of destroying any allied tank at extreme range. Its frontal armour, up to 250mm thick, made it nearly impervious from the front. But it was also nearly 72 tons, with mobility issues to match. The engine, already overtaxed in lighter vehicles, proved inadequate. Suspension failures and high fuel consumption were frequent. Cross-country mobility was poor, and the vehicle was prone to breakdowns. Only 70 to 80 units were built. Each one required immense resources and production time. Operational use was limited. Jagdtigers served in small numbers with units like the 653rd and 512th Heavy Tank Destroyer Battalions. In combat, they occasionally succeeded in ambush roles, but most were abandoned or destroyed by their own crews due to mechanical failure or lack of fuel. German records show that only about 20% were lost to enemy fire. Tank ace Otto Carius, who commanded the Jagdtigers, noted that crews were often undertrained and unwilling to fight. The vehicle's sheer size made it difficult to transport, conceal, or recover. Bridges often could not support its weight. Some Jagdtigers became static bunkers, dug into defensive positions when movement was no longer feasible. The Jagdtiger failed because it was built for a strategic situation that no longer existed. It was over-engineered, logistically unsustainable, and tactically rigid. For every Jagdtiger built, Germany could have fielded several more reliable vehicles like the Panzer IV. Its existence reflected a strategic disconnect between battlefield needs and ideological ambitions. Today it is remembered not as a battlefield success, but as a symbol of excess. A technically impressive machine that arrived too late and asked too much of an already collapsing war effort. The Jagdtiger remains a case study in how advanced technology can falter without the logistical and tactical framework to support it. The Arjun MK-1 began in the 1970s as India's ambitious attempt to build a modern, domestically produced main battle tank capable of matching Pakistan's fleet and reducing dependence on foreign suppliers. But by the time it finally entered service more than 30 years later, it had become one of the most troubled armoured projects in the world. The Arjun's problems started early. India lacked the industrial base to produce advanced tank components, forcing the program to rely on imported subsystems, engineers, transmissions, and fire control systems, which undermined the initial goal of self-reliance. As designers attempted to match or exceed Western main battle tank standards, the tank's weight gradually ballooned. The original requirement envisioned a 40-ton vehicle. The final MK-1 weighed almost 60 tons. That weight created immediate operational issues. Most Indian Army bridges and rail cars could not support it, and many regions where India expected to deploy tanks simply could not accommodate a vehicle that heavy. Mobility in desert terrain was acceptable, but performance in soft or uneven ground suffered. Trials exposed reliability problems. The engine struggled in India's extreme temperatures, requiring frequent downtime. Despite inbuilt AC units, heat buildup in the crew compartment, especially during long operations, was a recurring complaint. Ammunition storage and ergonomics were criticized in army reports, and early models suffered from fire control and stabilization faults that reduced accuracy on the move. Even after improvements, the army refused to adopt the Arjun in large numbers. Only 124 MK-1 units were ultimately ordered, far below the intended fleet. Logistically, the tank was a misfit. India's armoured doctrine centres on rapid deployment across a varied terrain against Pakistan or China, roles better suited to lighter, proven designs like the T-72 and T-90. The Arjun's weight limited where it could go, how fast it could move, and what infrastructure could support it. For a country with India's strategic geography, that mismatch was decisive. The Disston 6-ton tractor tank was an American attempt to build a low-cost armoured vehicle during the mid-1930s, a time when the US military had almost no budget for tanks and little institutional interest in developing them. It is remembered today as a failed commercial product rather than a serious military machine, an improvised hybrid that only ever found one buyer. The design emerged from a collaboration between the Disston Sawworks, primarily a tool and blade manufacturer, and the Caterpillar tractor company. Their shared goal was to produce a cheap export-friendly tank by mounting a riveted armoured hull and turret onto a commercially available Caterpillar tractor chassis. At a time when many countries lacked either the funds or industrial capacity for sophisticated armoured vehicles, Disston believed there was a potential market for such a budget tank. They hoped newly independent or politically unstable states might purchase it for internal security or deterrence. The resulting vehicle reflected its origin. The chassis was not designed for combat and struggled with the added weight of armour. Armour protection was minimal, offering limited resistance to anything heavier than small arms fire. The standard armament included a .30 caliber machine gun in the hull and a short-barreled 37mm cannon in the turret. The interior was cramped, and the turret had poor ergonomics. Its top speed, around 5 to 6 miles per hour, was significantly lower than contemporary tanks. Steering remained tractor-like, with wide turns and limited agility. The Disston tank never entered service with the US military, which already dismissed tractors as unsuitable platforms for combat vehicles. Disston marketed abroad instead. In the mid-1930s, Afghanistan purchased 5 units, the only confirmed sale. These tanks were reportedly used for internal security and even paraded in Kabul as symbols of modernization. No other nation expressed interest, as the design offered few advantages over established light tanks from European manufacturers. The tank failed because it attempted to merge incompatible concepts: agricultural machinery and battlefield requirements. While the idea of a cheap tank was appealing, the compromises made to keep costs low ensured the final product was slow, weakly armed, thinly armoured, and tactically inflexible. It arrived during a period of rapidly advancing tank doctrine, when even poor nations preferred to invest in proven designs. In 1940, with Japan threatening the Pacific, New Zealand had no tanks to defend itself. In a panic, Bob Semple, Minister of Public Works, approved a plan to build an armoured vehicle using locally available materials. The result would become one of the most infamous improvised tanks of the Second World War. New Zealand, relying on imported equipment, could not expect timely deliveries from Britain. The base chassis chosen was a Caterpillar D8 tractor, commonly used in construction. The armoured body was constructed from corrugated manganese steel, a makeshift alternative to proper rolled armour plate. The tank's profile was tall, the interior cramped, and visibility was limited to firing slits. Armament consisted of up to 6 Bren light machine guns mounted around the hull, operated by crew members who often had to stand or lie in awkward positions to fire. No cannon was ever fitted. The vehicle weighed around 18 tons and moved slowly over rough terrain. Trials revealed the tank's fundamental flaws. Its suspension struggled under the weight and its height made it highly visible. The thin, improvised armour offered minimal protection, and its multiple Bren guns provided little concentrated firepower. Conditions inside were poor, hot, loud, and unstable. One crew member reportedly had to lie on a mattress to operate one of the guns. The tank even had to stop completely to change gears. Steering, inherited from the tractor base, was unsuitable for combat maneuvering. The design also lacked proper ventilation, making extended operations nearly impossible. Public enthusiasm quickly faded. The New Zealand military had little confidence in the design. Only 3 Bob Semple tanks were completed before the project was abandoned. By 1942, proper tanks from Britain and the United States had arrived, eliminating the need for domestic improvisations. Though it never saw combat, the Bob Semple became a subject of ridicule even in wartime New Zealand. Contemporary press and public commentary mocked its size, awkward shape, and poor mobility, branding it more a symbol of desperation than innovation. Yet its legacy is not entirely negative. It represents an honest effort by a small nation to contribute to its defense in the face of uncertainty. In summer 1941, as German forces closed in on Kharkiv, Soviet authorities ordered emergency defenses. With tank factories under threat, workers began building improvised fighting vehicles. The result was the KhTZ-16, a makeshift armoured tractor pressed into service during the darkest days of the Eastern Front. The KhTZ originated at the Kharkiv tractor plant. Using a tractor chassis, workers fitted the vehicle with steel casement mounting, a fixed, forward-facing 45mm anti-tank gun, and a machine gun. Unlike the Bob Semple, it used actual armour plating. Its intended role was defensive, to provide mobile firepower during urban combat. Blueprints were rushed, materials were scarce, and production lines were improvised inside still functioning sections of the Trenton plant. Though the gun gave it more bite than many improvised vehicles, the chassis was unsuited for the task. The added weight strained the engine, limiting speed to around 15 km an hour. Armour was 10 to 12mm thick, enough for small arms protection but not for anti-tank weapons. The lack of a rotating turret reduced flexibility, requiring the entire vehicle to turn to aim. Its low crew capacity, typically only 2 men, left it tactically vulnerable and difficult to operate effectively under pressure. Performance in the field reflected its limitations. The KhTZ was used during the defense of Kharkiv in autumn 1941. Crews reported poor stability and maneuverability, with vehicles often breaking down or being destroyed before withdrawal was possible. In many cases, they were abandoned or cannibalized for parts. Morale among its operators was mixed. While some appreciated the attempt at defense, others resented being sent into battle with what they considered an underpowered machine and thought it would be better to focus on building anti-tank guns. Soviet authorities initially ordered hundreds, but only 70 to 90 were completed before the city fell. As factories were relocated eastward and regular tank production resumed, makeshift products like the KhTZ-16 were quickly abandoned. The few surviving units were phased out or destroyed.